Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host, as always. And joining me on a Victory Thursday, Tyler, my guy. What's up, man? How you doing tonight?
You have to do it like the Browns fans do with their jerseys and just like tape over Monday, just put Thursday. But yeah, doing well. Victory Thursday is good enough for me.
Yeah.
It took me 3 weeks to wear this last year. So getting to wear it this week in the first week is nice.
Yeah. Shout out Homage, not a sponsor of the show, but maybe one day. They make great stuff. We're both wearing Homage shirts today. I'm wearing a Quentin Johnston one. More on him later. But yeah, should be fun. All right, we are here to preview the Chargers and Panthers Week 2 game. Obviously, I'm assuming a lot of people are watching the Thursday night football game right now, and that's okay. Tyler and I decided we did not want to record at 8:30 again, so we are recording at a normal time, and hopefully you guys are appreciative of that. So it should be a lot of fun to dive into this matchup. I think I was listening to a couple of national podcasts. There's not a lot of excitement about this game from a national media perspective. But Tyler and I are going to cover it, and we're going to be excited, and we're going to have a great conversation. So before we get started, obviously, we appreciate all of you guys for tuning in live. If you're not tuning in live, make sure and like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you are finding the podcast. Tell a friend. All that good stuff really does help continue to grow the show. And we obviously have some goals, and we would like you guys to help us out with that. All right, let's dive into the injury report. Unfortunately, might seem like a bit of a more lengthy injury report this week for the Chargers. I think the big one is obviously Joey Bosa. We just got a vintage Joey Bosa game, and then he's right back on the injury report with the back injury. So just unfortunate. He was a limited participant in practice yesterday, Wednesday, and then he did not practice today, Thursday. So we'll see what happens there. If he is able to practice in a limited fashion tomorrow, I would kind of think that would indicate that he could have a chance of playing. If he does not practice, that usually indicates that they are not going to play in this game, which would be a major bummer to get a huge Joey Bosa Khalil Mack game week 1, and then already week 2 we're back to last season where it's Khalil. And thankfully this time around the Chargers have Tuli and Bud, but just be kind of a bummer coming off such a great performance from Joey Bosa.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers invested in insurance, so they are ready for this. It's a bummer that it would maybe happen week 2, but so it is. I do wonder, honestly, if this were the Chiefs or maybe even the Steelers, if Joey would play, considering how the Panthers looked. I get why they would be cautious. They've been, granted, it was the offseason, the preseason, but they've been very cautious with injuries. And so if he's not 100%, this is not the worst game to miss. So it's unfortunate. I'd like to see him string more than, one game together. But, nature of the NFL.
Yeah, unfortunately. The good news there is we would get to see more of Tuli. Not a whole lot of action for him. But I thought in his limited reps, he looked fantastic. Had a couple of great run stops, set the edge, does his usual Tuli stuff. Apparently still hates tight ends and hates tight ends from Notre Dame even more. So he had a great game setting the edge there. The players who I think most likely are trending towards being out, Alohi Gilman dealing with a knee injury, and then Jasir Taylor dealing with a fibula injury, which I thought it was reported during the game that it was an ankle injury. But both of those players did leave the game and then come back and finish the game. But now neither of them have practice today. So very interesting personnel wrinkles there. We have been concerned about the Chargers slot position. And Jasir, I thought, had a good game on Sunday. Again, that's kind of unfortunate too. And then, no Alohi Gilman means more Elijah Molden and AJ Finley, who did not play last week either.
Yeah, unfortunate. I didn't even realize they were trending this way after the game, but suddenly this week they're not practicing. So it's a bummer. Gilman, did he miss no, he missed the third.
It was a couple plays in the third quarter. Oh, you're talking about last season?
Last season, yeah. He missed time early on.
Yeah, he missed a few games early on in the season, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a bummer. The good news is, and I tweeted this kind of before the show, Joe Ortiz traded for Elijah Molden, and they were ready for anything that could happen. Again, another bummer that happened so early, but they're ready. I feel pretty good with Elijah Molden being back there and AJ Finley being back there versus, if it were, all respect to them, JT Woods and Tony Jefferson. I feel better about this duo. So I'm sure they'll elevate somebody, particularly someone who can play special teams. But yeah, bummer to see two guys out so early. Curious how much faith they put in Tarheeb still to go out there
Right.
and be that guy, or if they just have Elijah Molden be that guy.
I don't know where Elijah Molden is at with the playbook, but I think I would prefer having him play in the slot and then have AJ Finley and you elevate Tony Jefferson and play safety.
Yeah.
Obviously Derwin can play in the slot as well. I think he had 12 snaps in the slot last week. So some of that was also with Jasir Taylor on the field. So like a dime package kind of situation.
Yeah.
So I'm probably more concerned about Alohi than I am Jasir Taylor. I think they have some other options in the slot. But just, the value that Alohi brings, we know that he is obviously, a leader of the football team. And the team has said publicly they think they have one of the best safety duos in the league because of Alohi. And just his nature to be able to force turnovers is a huge aspect of this defense and their potential. So I feel good about where they're at from the slot and where they're at on the edge, but not having Alohi, I think, just kind of complicates things.
Yeah, I think so. I don't. Again, I'm thankful this particular week, but yes, it's definitely a bummer as this team's starting to gel and the defense looks so good.
Yeah, 100%. From a Panthers perspective, not a ton to discuss here. Derek Brown, their best player by like a country mile, is obviously not going to play this week. He is on injured reserve. The other one that's kind of noteworthy is Jadeveon Clowney. He's dealing with an ankle injury similar to Alohi and Jasir Taylor. He was able to come back in the game against the Saints and finish the game. I didn't watch the game. He only had one pressure and 0 run stops. So I don't know if that was a Saints offensive line thing or if that was Jadeveon not healthy thing. He did not practice yesterday, and he was a limited participant today. So that is something to keep an eye on. The Panthers edge rusher room is not the deepest in the world. Anytime you have a guy like Jadeveon Clowney as your best edge rusher, I think that kind of indicates where you're at. So, if he is unable to play or if he's on a pitch count, that is a huge, huge deal for the Panthers defense.
Yeah, this is just looking over their defense. I don't even know where to start. If Clowney and Brown are both out, obviously Brown is out, but if they're both out, you're looking at this defense and feeling pretty good about your chances. If the Chargers, or not the Chargers, the Panthers had any final thing to get after the Chargers, it was Clowney. If he's out, or even if he's limited, not great. And then, oh, by the way, you're limited, and pick Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt like that as your thing that you get to pick while you're limited. So feel pretty good about that one. Unfortunate. I hate seeing players get hurt and then be out for the entire season so early, but it goes in the Chargers' favor.
Yeah, I still am surprised that he signed with the Panthers. Usually players in his position are very clearly like ring chasing and like get me on a contending team. I mean, that's what he did with the Ravens. Maybe it was a bag thing, as Kevin points out in the chat. Maybe he just wanted to get his big contract and get out of here. So we'll see what happens there. But like I said, not a ton of injury to stuff on the Panther side of things. That's pretty much it. One other thing that I wanted to touch on briefly, the Chargers are going to stay on the East Coast. So they're going to travel to Charlotte, North Carolina tomorrow. And then they're going to stay in Charlotte until they have to travel to Pittsburgh for the Steelers game. I reached out to a 49ers friend of mine, a 49ers podcaster who I know and have worked with in the past. And Jim Harbaugh did this 3 of the 4 seasons that he was in San Francisco. And so he is a fan of whenever you travel to the East Coast or opposite coast to, stay over there and limit travel and have some team bonding. And they talked about doing board games and all that stuff yesterday and today. And so I thought it was worth bringing up because the Chargers had to request this of the NFL. They had to request it of the schedule makers to have an East Coast trip early in the season so they could have this kind of, team bonding road trip, if you will. So Jim Harbaugh is a man of routine, and he is sticking with the East Coast road trip theme that he planned out in San Francisco for 3 of the 4 years.
I love it because you can look at, and we made a bit about the whole travel and the miles thing and the unfair advantage or disadvantage it would be for the Chargers to have to travel that much. Well, if you can do anything to mitigate that and to not make it as much of a problem, go for it. And that's very much the Jim Harbaugh way. I completely understand why they would do this. They'll stay over there. It makes sense. I don't know how many miles it cuts out in total, but it's not flying back to California and then flying back out there. Totally fine with it. Go team bond. Go, stay acclimated on the East Coast. You're going to have to play more of those games. I have no problem with this. I think it's a smart thing to do. And they will probably, I would assume, be taking the stairs everywhere they go.
Yeah, the no elevator movement is strong. Basically, it cuts out 2,000 miles round trip. So,
okay,
it's 21,000 miles, or not 21,000. Excuse me, 2,100 miles from LAX to Charlotte, and then it's 2,200 from Pittsburgh to LAX. So,
yeah,
saves you a good chunk of miles. And the Chargers were going to be traveling the most mileage of any team in the season, of any team in the NFL, and now I think it'd be like fourth most or something like that. So I think it's cool, man. I think, there's a lot of things that you can take from other NFL teams, but one of the reasons why the Chiefs do training camp where they do training camp every single year is so they can kind of get away from everything else and just focus on football and bond as a team. And they're living in a college dorm for 3 weeks and stuff like that. I think there's still a lot of football that, there's a personal side of things, there's a human side of things, and being able to connect with your teammates and have these kind of experiences, I think just, strengthens the season. And the fact that this is early on in the season, it just kind of, I think, can build some positive momentum for this team as they go throughout the rest of the year.
So I don't know if you just mentioned it. Are they staying in the same spot over the 2 weeks?
Yeah, they are staying in Charlotte the entire week, basically. So they're staying Friday to Friday, and then they're going to travel to Pittsburgh, stay in Pittsburgh Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, obviously, for the game, and then fly back Sunday afternoon from the Pittsburgh game back to LAX.
Cool. Smart.
10-day business trip for the Chargers. Love to see it. All right. Let's dive into this week 2 preview. Like we did last week, we're going to have certain things that we want to touch on and, talking about coaching storylines and things like that. That's where we are going to start each week. And so, Tyler, what is your coaching storyline that you are really paying attention to in week 2?
Are the shallow crossers here to stay? Is that something they're going to continue to work into their offense and use specifically with Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston? Not that they didn't find success doing other things, but it worked. With Quentin Johnston early on, it worked. With Ladd McConkey to end the game, it worked. Is that here to stay? Is that a wrinkle that is here to stay, as they don't have DJ Chark? So I'm sure they want to try to find a way to push the ball down the field. But that shallow crosser stuff worked. It looked good. They have the right personnel for it. So is that here to stay? Or was that just something in response to, oh, God, it's Max Crosby. Let's throw this thing underneath, short, quick, whatever. Or is that something they really want to lean into? And if so, how often do they do it? I thought it was a really good floor raiser for this offense. I'd love to see them do it more.
Yeah, I think it just establishes some confidence in the young players that they have. So there's a lot of offensive curiosity that I have when you're not playing the Raiders and Max Crosby is just kind of, destroying you on stunts. And the Raiders actually blitzed at the second highest rate in the league in week 1. So they were very clearly like sending the house at Justin Herbert, and Greg Roman said as much. Like, we were not really prepared for that, which can happen in week 1. So what does this look like against a defense that you have prepared for more heavily? You have week 1 film on, you have kind of some adjustments you want to make and things like that. The crossing patterns, I think, is a good shout out. The way that they're able to get vertical this week is super interesting to me, because I think they will have the chance to do that. So I think just offensively, I don't know really how much stock I'm really putting into the game plan of the passing attack from week 1, just because it felt like they were just like, hey, let's move the football as much as we can. Let's get the ball out quick. And then we'll just kind of move on to next week, because we think we can trust our defense and run the football. And they were eventually able to do that in the second half.
Crud. I was like just glancing away for a second while I muted myself. Yeah, that's true. You definitely cannot look at that week 1 game and put too much stock into it. I mean, even just, and I just wrapped this up watching, Scott Matlock. They decided to go do that a lot in the first half. Second half, they went completely away from it. So they're willing to adjust by half, and I'm sure over games as well. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah. Do you feel like Do you feel like the crossers are here to stay, though? Do you think it is going to be a feature of this offense, or do you think it's going to kind of?
It should be. It
Okay.
should be. If you, especially with Jim Harbaugh talking about Quentin Johnson last year, and he should have been used a certain way. Yes, they do want to still feature him down the field, but if you're all about that, you use that with Quentin Johnson. If both you and Joe Ortiz call Lad McConkey Brock Bowers light, you get him working, in space and after the catch. So I think it doesn't have to specifically just be crossers, but I think those should be here to stay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, I'm going to go to the other side of the ball with Jesse Minter's defense, which I don't know if did you have a chance to listen to his press conference today?
I did not.
Okay, so for those who missed it, the Chargers used all 3 linebackers as signal callers, which is a huge, accomplishment from the equipment staff. That's no easy feat to get all of that stuff ready to rock and seamless and things like that. And Jesse also said that they want to throw Troy Dye more in, so they're going to have 4 play callers potentially this season. He's just doing things that are at a different level than I think of a lot of NFL teams. But one thing we saw a lot of in the preseason that we saw some of in the week 1 opener was the emphasis of the slot blitz. And I'm bringing this up because Alontae Taylor, who plays slot cornerback for the Saints, had 3 sacks on slot blitzes last week against the Carolina Panthers. Overall, the Saints brought a slot blitz 11 times and accumulated 6 pressures, 3 sacks, and 1 quarterback hit. So it was very clearly something the Carolina Panthers struggled with, and it was very successful for the Saints. I think this is going to be something that the Chargers kind of bring back a little bit more heavily this week. We'll see what happens specifically with who it is, right? But Elijah Molden can blitz. Tarheeb Still can blitz. I think that's probably one of his best attributes. And then obviously Derwin James can blitz from the slot. And so I think this is potentially a week that you really want to heat up Bryce Young. And as Jesse Minter said today, they don't want him to get in rhythm. Like, he didn't have a chance to do that against the Saints. They do not want to let that happen this week against the Chargers.
So yeah, Bryce Young's passer rating under pressure is 4.6. That's not a completion. It's 4.6 is awful.
I literally did not know it could get that low.
No, like that's what did he do to get the 4.6? What was the specific thing that he did? I don't know. But a passer rating of 4.6 is definitely not great. Definitely not a good pressure to sack rate, avoider either. So yeah, heat it up. I don't know who, like you said, who will end up being that guy in the slot. How many times did Derwin blitz this past game?
I think it was like 3 or 4. It wasn't a ton.
Yeah.
He had like one really awesome rush against Dylan Parham.
Yeah.
But it was not a huge Derwin game, and we can talk about how he played, but I expect him to blitz more often this week. I think this is a game where you want to kind of let him loose, especially without your potential starting slot out.
Oh yeah, I think this is a week you kind of have some fun and just see what happens when your opposing quarterback is 2 for 10 with 1 interception on when you're pressured. And unfortunately, Bryce Young has not played very well, and you can get to him and you can heat him up. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun, entertaining watch on our couches, and I almost feel bad for Panthers fans and for the Panthers.
Oh, dude, imagine being a Panthers fan watching CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson just light it up, and then you got to watch what happened on Sunday. The last thing about Bryce Young against the blitz, you brought up the passer rating. So in terms of EPA per dropback and success rate, which I know we mentioned those things a lot, but if you don't know what success rate is basically how often you are making positive yardage in certain situations. And Nate Tice had a great explanation of it. Basically, on first down, if you get half the yards, that's a successful play. If you get on second down, you get half the yards, that's a successful play. And then third down is obviously converting on third down. That's a successful play. And so success rate measures how often you are moving the ball in those certain situations. So the league average quarterback, against the blitz in week 1, I got this information from a friend. The league average quarterback was having a success rate of 44% against the blitz and an EPA per dropback of negative 0.164. So that's average, right? Just keep that in mind. Bryce Young was pressured, and when he was blitz, just exclusively blitz, not pressure, just blitz, he had a success rate of 21%, which is by far the worst in the league, and an EPA per dropback of negative 1.19. Essentially, when the Saints blitzed the Panthers, they were losing a point every single time, which is unreal. That's an insane kind of efficiency or inefficiency, I guess, against the blitz. So it Jesse Minter, the game plan is very simple. Let's crank that blitz rate up to like 50% and let's get out of here on a Sunday afternoon and let's get some backups into the game. And it's rough. And I think Jesse Minter is like he's a descendant of Wink Martindale, who is like one of the guys who blitzes. And I think we really see him crank that dial up, especially if Joey Bosa is either limited or not playing.
Oh, it's sad. It just kind of feels sad. I don't know why.
When I got that information, I literally like cringed. Like I had an audible like reaction of like, oh gosh, like I could not believe it. And it was the 21% was like a full 6 points worse than whoever was 31st, who was Deshaun Watson, by the way. So it was
who I don't feel sad about.
That I definitely don't feel sad about. That guy can get the fuck out of the league for all I care.
Yeah, I definitely don't care. I was looking last year to see if maybe they had played the Giants. I was just curious how he did, but they didn't play the Giants last year. Did they play the Vikings? Okay, they played the Vikings. I assumed the Vikings played like the way the Vikings played. Yeah. He had 204 yards. Actually, wasn't a bad game for him, I guess.
204 yards.
That's the more on PrizePicks. So go for it.
Yeah.
But 204 was not great. Yes, I genuinely feel bad. I don't remember the last time I knew an opposing quarterback was in for an awful day, and I didn't even worry about him being able to have a good one, which normally makes me eat my own words in about 4 days. But I don't know, man. I'm thrilled that we have Jesse Minter. He's going to do an incredible thing, and I'm just going to kind of sit there and feel just a bit bad.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see the answer. I thought the game plan overall was generally fantastic, very smart, a lot of safety help over to Devontae Adams. They defended the run like crazy.
Yeah,
I think this defense has a chance to really kind of build. The Steelers' offense is not exactly a world beater either, so get some positive momentum into week 4. Obviously, a huge challenge that week. If they have a positive showing against the Chiefs, you head into the bye feeling just great about where the defense is at. So I just think you just keep this train rolling.
Do you think? Sorry, real quick, because I know you mentioned the like real versus fake segment about the coverage and the more passive coverage. So the Chargers ran a ton of cover 6, cover 2, and then cover 6 was their next most common one. Do you think they still roll through that this week? Is the game plan fluid, or do you feel like just because they have certain personnel and they have guys that are hurt, they'll continue to be more passive?
I think the game plan is fluid. If you look at like the coverage rates of Mike McDonald, I think that's generally what this kind of tree wants to do. And I think the Seahawks were like 3rd in the league in cover 1 percentage, if I'm not mistaken. Granted, they have Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon, and the Chargers do not. But I think we'll see it balance out a little bit more. I don't think we'll see as much cover 6. I think the cover 6 usage was firmly a Devontae Adams game plan, and so they'll have that in their back pocket whenever they're worried about opposing pass catchers. And the Panthers, I think, have they're certainly more talented at receiver than they were last year, I will say that. But they do not have somebody like Devontae Adams.
No, not at all. But they do have Sanders, who some people rated over Brock Bowers. So we'll see how that goes.
I forgot about that one. Okay, let's talk about the things we are most excited to see. I'll go first here. This to me is a really strong potential for an offensive line rebound. And again, it's going to be very interesting to see what Chargers offensive line we get over weeks 3 and 4, because I don't know how much stock I'm going to put into this specific game, because on paper, this is a game that the Chargers offensive line should completely dominate. And the Saints offensive line had an awesome performance against the Panthers, and I think the Saints offensive line is significantly less talented than the Chargers offensive line, especially when you take into consideration the offensive tackle play that the Chargers have currently going on with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. So if you look at, where the Panthers were at without Derek Brown and potentially without Jadeveon Clowney, Derek Carr was the least pressured quarterback in the league on Sunday at 7.7%. The only time they actually got home was on a kind of a scramble drill when the Panthers backup edge rusher came in for Clowney, kind of chased Derek Carr to the sideline and happened to get him down before Derek Carr did his patented throw the ball away to the sideline on third down. So that was where they are at. Not only was the pressure rate extremely low, they actually blitzed at like the 5th highest rate in the league. So they were blitzing a ton and not getting home at all, which to me is like hey, we don't have a lot of talent on this side of things, so we're just going to try and throw shit at the wall. And unfortunately for them, it did not work. So the Chargers are going to have to be on top of that, more on top of that than they were last week. But if they can clean up the blitz pickups situations, which I thought they did a much better job of in the second half, this should be a game where Justin Herbert is able to be very clean after the fact. The other aspect of things, the Panthers allowed 180 total rushing yards, tied for third most in the league. And despite the blowout nature of that game and the Alvin Kamara explosion, they actually never stacked the box. Well, not never, but they stacked the box against Alvin Kamara on a 20% clip. So that was pretty much league average this past season. That's according to Next Gen Stats. So this is a game where the Chargers should be able to protect Justin Herbert, run the football. Gus Edwards did not have an effective game this past week. I think he should be able to have an effective this game. And J.K. Dobbins can continue to build that momentum for his comeback career as well. So the potential for this offensive line to just control this game from the start is right there. I just think the Panthers do not have a ton of talent up front. They do not have any real difference makers, especially without Derek Brown now. This has to be a game where the Chargers offensive line just completely bounces back, erases all that bad juju against the Raiders, and just comes out and controls this game from start to finish.
Yeah, I've watched the offense for just specific players or things now, like maybe 3 or 4 times, just like kind of flying through. And every time that first half is so frustrating. Watching them not be able to pick up blitzes. They'd bring Spillane and the other linebacker, or they'd like wait and they'd creep in the blitz last minute or whatever, and they just could not figure it out. They did, I think, a much better job in the second half, like you've said, and like we've been saying. So I would love to see them get a nice, clean game, all sorted out. Don't need zero pressures. Just don't need the consistent mistakes from, in particular, the 3 interior guys that we saw on Sunday. So they can clean it up. I'll feel much better. It's kind of a lose-lose. Like if they do a good job, it's just the Panthers. They do a bad job, wow, it was the Panthers guys. It's kind of a lose-lose there, but I'd rather see a clean game.
Yeah, if this offensive line struggles against the Panthers, that's a red alert scenario for me. So again, this is a game that if Justin Herbert is getting pressured and they're not able to run the football, I am probably a little scared of what this interior offensive line is going to be like the rest of the season. So there's a lot of stuff going on social media of like blaming certain players for X, Y, and Z. I'll just say this when it comes to when the opposing defenses bring 7 defenders or 6 defenders on a blitz, you all have certain protection rules. So like there's a play where Zion is kind of getting cooked on social media. And if you watch Zion and Rashawn, they both do the same thing. They both start inside and then they go outside to their respective assignments. And Robert Spillane goes and hits Justin Herbert right in the face. And people are like, well, why didn't Zion do that? Well, if you actually watch the play, correct, the 2 of them do the same thing and they go inside and outside. So that to me shows that they're very clearly expecting Bozeman or Dobbins to pick up the middle linebacker who was blitzing, and that did not happen. The other thing on that play that Nate Tice pointed out that I actually missed is that Hayden Hurst was the hot read, and he was run blocking, like down the field, like he was not expecting the football. So stuff like that can happen in week 1 in terms of like your hot reads not being actually hot and not turning around and stuff like that. So I think the pass protection, Jim Harbaugh talking about where you can grow from week to 2. I think pass protection and the rules of pass protection and how they handle the blitz, I think is where we'll see the most growth. Granted, it is the Panthers, but I do think it is just going to be kind of a game where they can, kind of take a deep breath and stabilize some things up front.
Yeah, I could tell a couple of times it was just a little bit goofy. The timing was a bit off. There was that reverse to Darius Davis. Hayden Hurst is supposed to fake like he's blocking to the left. Then he turns around and runs to the right, but he's like tripping over another guy. And that's just football. Like there's 22 bodies on the field, so I get it. Not Zion's fault by any means, but I think Joel gets beaten by Christian Wilkins on that one play. Zion's supposed to kick out, I think, Max Crosby, but then he has to take on, Christian Wilkins, and that messes up the play. So Crosby's free on the backside. Yeah, it just stuff like the timing just wasn't quite there. So I hope that definitely gets sorted out this game.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Tyler, what are you most excited to watch in this game?
Yeah, give me this interior defensive line. I think I had a blast watching them on film. I loved watching them live. Had a blast watching them on film. I'm trying to find something best on best related for this Panthers team. The Panthers are running out of best players, but they spent a lot of money on their guards this offseason. And so I would love to see, I'm going to love seeing this interior defensive line versus at least a highly paid interior offensive line of the Panthers. That should kind of be their best unit potentially that's available on Sunday. So curious to see how they do. Can this team keep it up? What was it, just they played well against the Raiders, or is this interior defensive line for real? Because if they can do it again, and Otito and Puno Ford, Morgan Fox look like that again, and Ty Tart kicks in and does well, then like maybe they are for real. I just want to see it twice.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think, the Panthers, their interior trio is not like amazing. It's not the Chiefs, but with Damian Lewis and Austin Corbett and Robert Hunt, they have an above average interior trio. Like I think that trio plays for most of the league. Like I think, there's very few teams that can say like definitively we have a better interior trio than that. So this is definitely going to be more of a challenge. I think Andre James and Dylan Parham are good players for the Raiders, but they were starting Charlie Whitehair or whatever his name is. Not Charlie.
Cody
Whitehair. Thank you. I almost said Charlie Whitehurst. That would have been funny. Cody Whitehair, who's
Puna Ford treated it like it was Charlie Whitehurst. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Winning, so
100%. But this interior trio for the Panthers, it's significantly better than what the Raiders have, just from 1 through 3 standpoint. As Kevin Koenig points out, Robert Hunt is a large human. So how this defensive line matches up, I think, is going to be fun. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a good interior offensive line trio. Obviously, the Chiefs have the best interior offensive line trio in the league. Yes. So this is another way the Chargers can just kind of build some momentum and keep working things. And if Puna Ford and Otito Ogbonia can show out against this group, then obviously it's just more confidence, built in that group going forward.
Yeah, very, very excited to watch this group. It was fun. Let's see it again.
I will say, despite the skill sets of those three, the Panthers were not able to run the football at all against the Saints.
So no, and I'm trying to think of who the interior guys for the Saints even are.
Brian Brzee is one of them, and they kind of like rotate through everybody else. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Brzee's kind of like their best interior guy right now. So I think the success rate of the Panthers rushing attack was like 28th or 29th in the league, so it wasn't worst. But the whole offense was just kind of a mess, and some of that can just be like week one jitters and things like that. And somebody pointed out earlier that Canales, apparently his idol is Jim Harbaugh, and so like there's going to be some real desire from the Panthers to come out and not get just run out of the building in this one. But if you can't run the football, you can't run the football.
I don't even know what they do. Like they don't run, they can't pass. They're out of defensive linemen. Yeah. They have Jason Horn. They've had some good defensive players, but yeah, sorry, I'm glad Jim Harbaugh is your idol. He's about to don't meet your idols, I think is what they tell you, right?
On paper, though, this is an offensive line that should be good at run blocking because Ike Ekwonu, that's his best trait. His pass protection is still, very much an issue. Taylor Moton's a good run blocker. So they're not like world beaters up front. This isn't the Eagles offensive line who just like can wreck anybody.
Mhm.
But all 5 of them, their best attribute is run blocking. And for them to not be able to run the football at all against the Saints, who I wasn't expecting the Saints to like I thought they would beat the Panthers. I was not expecting to just like completely destroy them on defense and then put up 47 points
No.
on offense. So just was how much stock do you put in that, versus, this team can on paper be better on offense than they were last year.
Yeah.
All right, opposite side of things here, Tyler. What is keeping you up at night? Again, this one might just be like more about like I'm kind of like anxious to see how this one comes out versus like actually like
Yeah.
keeping us up at night.
Yeah, there's definitely a part of me that just wanted to say, is it a random trap game? I have no idea. Like, that's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah,
If I had to pick something, it's tricky because what they've done so far, and Leggette's only had one game, but Mingo, Xavier Leggett, even and Sanders too. These guys are, in theory, good yak guys. These are yards after catch guys. Mingo definitely was. Leggett underrated, I think top 5 in the class at that. Sanders, that's what he can do. This is a group that should be good after the catch. Now it's dependent on your blocking and ability for the quarterback to get you the football and all that. But I saw the Chargers give up a touchdown on Sunday. It was the one touchdown, but it was a missed tackle by Asante Samuel Jr. And I am just worried, especially without Alohi Gilman, now maybe without Jaw Taylor as well. How it's so like, I'm trying to pitch this, man, but I really my heart doesn't really like feel this. But I'm worried about the after catch stuff. They
yeah.
missed 10 tackles on Sunday. It was not catastrophic. It was once though. And if this offense, this Chargers offense, isn't quite all together and they can't quite score, 40 or whatever, like the Saints did, although there were some defensive touchdowns there. I don't know. Maybe a couple plays given up and makes things interesting. So that's what keeps me up at night. Your turn to lie through your teeth.
But if you're the Panthers, right, like your adjustment to week 1 should be, hey, like let's just get the ball out and let's try and get these receivers and tight end to make some plays for us and make Bryce Young's life easier. Because if you're looking at this Chargers defense, even without Joey Bosa potentially, and you're thinking, man, my guys just gave up 6 pressures to Chase Young. What's it going to do to Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa? My guys could not protect against the blitz. What's it going to do against Jesse Minter? Like, Dennis Allen for all his Dennis Allen can call blitz package as well. He's a good defensive mind. But anyways, if you're the Panthers, like the last thing you're going to want to do is just let them tee off on Bryce Young. So get the ball out quick. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers and make things easier on Bryce, and maybe you have a chance in this game if you're the Panthers. Whether that matters or not, I don't really know. One thing I am concerned about, potentially long-term issue, I don't really know. Joshua Palmer did not look healthy to me watching him on tape. He did not look like he was his usual self. It looked like he was dealing with something or was just slower than usual and just not as crisp and just like it was not the Jim Harbaugh. I was reading the comment. It was not the Joshua Palmer I am accustomed to watching on tape, and that has led me to believe so heavily that this guy could be the wide receiver 1 on this team. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about this particular matchup with JC Horn, who now is the Panthers' best player. And I think he is an ascending corner. I don't think he's like established himself as like a legit lockdown corner by any means, but he's a good cornerback in today's NFL. I obviously loved, if you have been a fan of the show, I love JC Horn coming out. He's been injured. He reminded me of Jalen Johnson. He's kind of following the Jalen Johnson arc where he was injured a lot early. He was healthy in his 3rd season last year, 4th year potentially like working back through some things. So this is a matchup that I'm concerned about with Joshua Palmer. According to, I want to make sure I get this right, Jacob Gibbs on Twitter is a great follow from an analytics perspective. Joshua Palmer ran 55% of his routes from the right wide receiver position, and that means he's going to see a lot of JC Horn. So this is a game where I would like to see more of the passing attack kind of come through, and I'm just a little nervous about Joshua Palmer's health and this particular matchup. And obviously, I think this team needs Palmer to like reach their full potential in order to actually be a viable passing attack. And if he is injured and if he's playing through something that he probably should take some time off from. It's just going to create some clunkiness of the offense that is not great long term. So we'll see what his response is. We'll see how healthy he looks. But I am concerned about Joshua Palmer in the short term, and I'm concerned about this matchup for him individually.
Yeah, that's an interesting call because I didn't focus on him specifically, so I didn't really key into that. Obviously, he did not have a productive day. Obviously, he had the one pretty awesome out route, and I think that was it. A target in the end zone that he quote unquote dropped, but like that's kind of
super difficult catch. But
yeah, weird turning split second, kind of catch there. So, but it was disappointing. Like I did genuinely believe he was going to have a better game, and if there was something ailing him, which again I did not see, but I wasn't paying attention either. But if there's something ailing him, that is definitely concerning. At some point too, like the number of injuries he's sustained can also just have their toll at some point. So unfortunate to hear that he looked the part, or that he looked like that was an issue. But yeah, hopefully it's not, because if that's the case, that's something that would bug me every week of the season, especially for a team already without DJ Chark, without another established guy. I believe in Ladd McConkey, obviously, but you're all of a sudden running out of guys. And if Palmer's got an injury history, Chark is already injured and has an injury history. Technically, McConkey also has an injury history, so it's getting dicey.
Yeah, I'm just I don't love the way it felt watching Joshua Palmer. Kevin McCurdy pointing out Derek Carr throwing up that 3 in Horn's face. It's so funny because they targeted JC Horn one time and it was an incomplete pass. So JC Horn, like literally, like he had a great game against the Saints. It was a 0, it was a nothing burger from him. So it was just so classic Derek Carr to pick on the one guy that he actually never threw at.
Of course.
In the game. Okay, let's get to our prize pick selections of the weeks. Not a ton of choices this week on prize picks for the Chargers and Panthers game, but we'll talk about some. Hopefully you guys are taking advantage of the Guilty as Charged connection here. It's a great way to link up with the daily fantasy support. It's the best way to do it. They continue to have the Caleb Williams special where if he throws at least one single passing yard, that counts as a positive in your selection of the week. This past week, we talked about our selections. I was a Gus Edwards touchdown away from going 5 for 5 last week, but I got 4 for 5. Feel pretty good heading into this week. So hopefully you guys are taking advantage. PrizePicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. Tyler, why don't you kick us off for your prize? We try and do 3 each week. There's not that many choices this one, but what is your selection of the week?
Yeah, I think you could very easily go Chargers more for anything and Panthers less for anything. Unfortunately, although maybe smart by those who create this site and put these numbers up, there's no Khalil Mack sack number, because if it were at 1.5, I might have even still suggested the more given this particular game. But alas, no defensive guys for the Chargers, at least that I can see. So for me, I think maybe not necessarily a get right game, but I think the Chargers struggled quite a bit on Sunday against the Raiders. And even then, like, Herbert didn't have a terrible game. Right now on PrizePicks, he's set at 207.5 passing yards. I think this morning or yesterday when I looked at this, it was at 217.5. So it's gone down to 207.5 passing yards. I think taking the more there feels pretty smart. Do I think it's 307 that he ends up getting? No, but I think Herbert can get over 207.5 passing yards. I think the Raiders did a fantastic job for the most of the game. That limited them. Tough game. This game, we'll see. Now, Derek Carr only threw for 200 yards. They didn't need to throw for a whole lot more than that. So maybe that's some of the concern here, but I think Herbert can get over that. And then I'll stick Ladd McConkey more on the 10.5 fantasy score. I think as long as we're logging receptions here as points, I think McConkey absolutely has earned the right to be considered that safety valve for Justin Herbert. I think he caught 3 passes against the Raiders. I think he can easily get to 5 or 6 in this game. Be a yak guy, work downfield, you name it, especially if maybe there is something with Josh Palmer. I think he could work in quite a bit. And I believe in both the floor and not ceiling, but single play potential of Quentin Johnston. Now, Steven, ask me how many times I've put money on Quentin Johnston and it's worked?
1.
0 actually. But this time it's going to be different. I believe it's going to be different. I think this defense, especially if JC Horn is drawing more of Josh Palmer or anyone else that's not Quentin Johnston, I think he's the guy that can work downfield. They're going to try to get him working downfield, get it all in one play, or raise the floor with shallow crossers, get 20 to 30 yards that way. I think they can pull it off. Again, I've been wrong every time with Quentin Johnston, but I think I believe in it.
Sorry, I looked at PrizePicks earlier today before they updated and changed everything, so I'm adjusting on the fly here.
You're good.
Quentin Johnston is my X factor. Spoiler alert. So
okay,
I guess that ties into that one. When I looked at PrizePicks earlier, J.K. Dobbins' number was at 45.5. So he's up to 56.5. I believe the Chargers are going to be able to run the football at a much higher clip this week, or much more efficient clip. 56.5. I don't know how I feel about that one. That seems a little high to me. So I think I'm going to pivot to Gus Edwards. I think this is going to be a Gus Edwards game. I mentioned the way that the Panthers were defending the run. They did not stack the box a whole lot against the Saints. The Raiders stacked the box against Gus Edwards at the second highest clip of any running back in the league last week, according to Next Gen Stats. So Ajiro Evero is a Vic Fangio disciple, and so they believe a lot in like having the 2 high shells and limiting things over the top. If they play with 7 defenders in the box or 6 defenders in the box, I think this could be a much better game for Gus Edwards. So I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb. I know JK is kind of the hot hand right now, but I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb and go more for Gus Edwards rushing yards at 45.5. I debated the touchdown thing, but I just think this is going to be a bigger Gus Edwards game.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go more on Hayden Hurst yards. I know he's also your X factor, so I guess kind of spoiler, we're working with each other's X factors today. But 19.5 doesn't feel like a whole lot to me, considering, we have answered now that Hurst is kind of the pass catching tight end. He ran, I think, like 15 more routes than Will Dissly did. And he had the big play. He was open like 4 or 5 other times, and Herbert just kind of missed him or moved off of him a little bit too early. So I did think Hurst looked good, and I think we see him have a little bit, of a bigger role in a. I don't know if a revenge game seems a little harsh, considering like not like end poorly against the Panthers, but 19.5. That's like one big play, so I'm cool with Hayden Hurst at 19.5. And then I mentioned Joshua Palmer, how concerned I am. I'm going to go less on his receiving totals. I don't think this is a big Josh Palmer week. So his number is at 45.5. This feels like a run the football, couple of big plays, maybe to Quentin and Ladd, maybe Hayden Hurst is kind of your third target. I mentioned JC Horn, concerned about the matchup. So unfortunately for Joshua Palmer, I'm going to take less on 45.5 yards.
Yeah, definitely don't mind that until it's I think for a lot of these guys, you could even just take less until they really sort out this rotation.
Yeah.
What are we thinking of Will Dissly 6.5 receiving yards?
It was so funny to see like the very first play, he gets a 12-yard first down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, like Will Dissly's going to be involved. And then that was his only target of the day. So he could easily, climb that ladder. I feel like he's going to be much more involved in the run game.
Yeah. It's one check down, man. It's one check down, guys.
One check down. So for me, I think that the one I feel most comfortable about is the Justin Herbert one, and then probably Hayden Hurst at 19.5 for what it's worth.
Yeah, I like that one. A lot of mores here. Any Panthers ones that caught your attention, just so we can have some balance?
Again, I looked at it earlier and I didn't love any of the earlier ones.
So there's one Xavier Legette at 23.5 receiving yards. We'll see how much he plays, but I don't know. There isn't even one from Mingo on here. So if he's another defender.
Their receivers are Legette, Deontay Johnson, and Adam Thielen in terms of the PrizePicks stuff.
Thielen, that's right.
I feel like the Panthers are probably going to score a touchdown. this week.
Wow.
I mean, going out on a limb. I feel like if anybody on this team scores a touchdown, it's probably Chuba Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
So he's at 0.5 rush plus receiving touchdowns. I feel like that's probably the Panthers one I would go with.
Yeah. If you want to take an easy one with the goblins, the little green goblin, Bryce Young, 5.5 rushing yards, just so you get the opposing teams you can place this on PrizePicks. Yeah, 5.5 rushing yards for Bryce Young, unless they're counting sack yardage against him, which I don't know if they do. But
well, that's like one scramble potentially.
That's one scramble. And if you're sending the house against Bryce Young, he's probably going to run a couple of times. So I think 5.5 yards is pretty good there. Some 3rd and 20 scramble that gets you that, no problem.
Yeah, that's fair. If you're keeping this exclusive to Chargers Panthers, that's probably the one to go with. I would take the free selection of Caleb Williams over 1 passing yard. So,
Correct.
But that's just me. All right. Appreciate PrizePicks. Great relationship with them. Super easy, great to use. PrizePicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. So we mentioned our X factors. I don't know how much else we want to say about Quentin Johnson and Hayden Hurst, but I found it interesting that Quentin was kind of the vertical receiver in week 1. There weren't a ton of targets, were not a ton of opportunities, but like he ran like a deep dig route and he was open, I think, and Justin Herbert kind of moved off of him pretty quickly. This feels like a game where they're going to run a lot more play action. And so I feel like if they are going to throw a deep play action shot, I think Quentin might be that guy. So this feels like a game where Quentin could kind of have, like a 70-yard game and a touchdown, maybe, hopefully. That would be great to see.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets a big play. So X factor wise, I think Quentin is, I think it's specifically the deep ball usage why I wanted to bring him up.
Yeah, no, I'm very curious how he does in this game. That's why I liked the more on him. Again, the floor feels really nice, but like you said, the deep ball deep ball opportunities at least will be there. So yeah, intriguing there for sure. As you mentioned, I have Hayden Hurst there. Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau had 69 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think Hayden Hurst, especially with what he's at with those receiving yards with PrizePicks, like I think he can get involved enough to, I don't know about lead the team in receiving yards, but do better than just kind of the 2 plays where there's the one well-designed play that opened him up, and then the only one other catch from there. I think you'll see 4 or 5 catches, 40-something yards. So a bit of an X factor, decent blocks as well.
Yeah, and he did have the red zone target. So the red zone targets mostly were Hayden and Ladd. So it was not there were not a ton of opportunities, but those 2 guys were the main red zone targets. So this could easily be a game where Justin has just like a tick longer and he's able to get Hayden Hurst on that crossing pattern, the corner route or whatever it was to Ladd. Maybe one of those things converts this time around and those guys end up with a touchdown this week. So should be fun there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tyler, picks of the week. What is your prediction for the final score this weekend?
Yeah, I'm not ready to give the Chargers a whole 30 burger yet until they show me they can do it. Even the Saints technically didn't do that on their own. That was with some other help. So I'll say the Chargers win 27, 17. I think you get something in garbage time. They score a touchdown. It was never really close. I'll say 27-17. That's a respect to the weapons I guess the Panthers have, but I believe the Chargers are just a better team almost at every spot, including the coach. So I think 27-17.
Yeah, I think that I would probably take the Panthers cornerback room because of JC Horn, but that's probably it right now without Derek Brown. So yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like too optimistic on the bounce back here for the offense, but I just think they're going to be able to run the football at a much higher level. I think we'll see, greater emphasis on the play action game, which I think just fits this offense much better. I think the potential here for the offensive line to get right to me is kind of driving this. 30 points is probably ambitious of me, but I am going to go with 30-13 this week. I understand why some people are bringing up like the trap game and some people are bringing up like the Chargers are 1-6. I just don't think we're really realizing how bad this Panthers roster is with the quarterback who just has like no confidence right now in Bryce Young. Like we're not even sure he can even like function an NFL offense right now in year 2. So it's a bad spot for them overall. The defense without Derek Brown, a banged up Jadeveon Clowney, like it's just there's not a whole lot outside of JC Horn that I'm concerned about. So I understand that trap games have happened to this team in the past. If you trust in Jim Harbaugh as much as we all trust, as much as people are saying that we should trust in Jim Harbaugh, I think you trust him to get this situation in a positive game script for the Chargers, be able to rush the passer at a high level, be able to run the football at a more efficient clip, play action deep shots. I think this is an obvious like Harbaugh game where they're just like completely locked in on an inferior opponent, and they just prove that they can, beat up on the worst teams at least. So 30 points, maybe a bit ambitious, but I really believe that they'll be able to get in a much higher rhythm on offense. And that's really kind of what's driving my thought process here.
Yeah, I'm not far. I'm at 27, so I'm certainly not saying that's going to be a low scoring affair, at least on the Chargers end. So, yeah, it's yes, NSN pointed out, why are the Panthers getting 17 if the Raiders only got 10? I think Getsy is not a great coordinator. I think Canales can at least put together a half decent offense. I don't think that'll be this week though. If the Chargers play the Panthers later on, and if they did play them later in the season, maybe there's more to fear. But right now, they just look like a team that is the team that got the first overall pick, except they didn't. The worst record in the league, and just not the pick to go with it. So they're just not a good team. I really don't remember the last time the Chargers played a team that was genuinely this bad. The Texans, and they lost. When it was Rex Burkhead.
Yeah, but like half the team was on the COVID list for that game too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And also the Chargers are,
different
Jim Harbaugh, healthier. Correct. So, yeah, I genuinely cannot think. And someone in the chat can let me know. I don't remember the last time the Chargers played a team this like rudderless.
Yeah, because you can't even say like the Patriots last year, because the Patriots defense for the entire season
defense was
like,
good.
Yeah, they were like top 10 defense, and they at least like could have that going for them. So it's been a minute. I think the Panthers, this is like the more points thing. I think it's like I think it's kind of like a garbage time situation.
Totally.
Get some backups into the game for the Chargers, and they're able. That's really what happened to the Saints. They only scored 17 points on the Saints because they had a garbage time touchdown. I think they scored with like a minute left in the game. So, it's in rough shape. I think odds on favorite for the number 1 pick, and it's going to be very interesting to see if they take a quarterback next year in a bad quarterback class, or they continue to ride with Bryce Young. So that's another topic for another day. But I would encourage people to not look at this as a trap game. I think a trap game implies that the other team is at least kind of like frisky and a tough matchup, and I don't feel that way about the Carolina Panthers. So
no, and there's no trap game. Also, kind of implies the next week is a game they're looking ahead to. I don't think the Steelers are quite there yet. Yes, Carolina's about to sign Rex Burkhead. No, if that happens, I'll change my prediction. I'll get back on here. I'll just do a live show just about that.
It'll be 27-16 instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, I just think Harbaugh's going to have them ready. I think the offense is going to really bounce back, and I think we're in for a much better performance on that side of the football. Justin will have some time, be able to pick them apart a bit. So, here's what it is. All right, Tyler. Any other thoughts about the Panthers matchup?
Just one more thing here from NSN. Thule needs snaps, but more worried about Alohi. Yes, very worried about Alohi, and I'm happy anytime we can see more of Thule. Unfortunate if it's expensive, Bosa, but happy to see more of Thule. Why not?
Yeah. Derek Klassen on the Athletic Football Show always talks about on defense, like each defense needs a couple of like henchmen, just ones that are just gonna just gonna come up and like hit people and just like do the dirty work. That's totally Thule, man. Like watching him defend the run and rush from the interior when it's not really like his quote unquote strong suit, and drop into coverage so the other guys can rush. Like Thule is a dirty work guy who on many other teams is probably their best edge rusher. Like for example, the Panthers, Thule would be their best edge rusher. So it's just, I love watching him play football. He does all the little things so well. He's so physical, sets an edge at a really high level. So I am excited to see him continue to progress this season, and I think he's doing a great job in his role.
Yes. Oops. Shit.
All righty, you guys. That's going to do it for us today. We will see you on Saturday morning for our live Q&A. Again, didn't get to a ton of questions and thoughts tonight in the chat, so make sure and bring those on Saturday. We had a ton of super chats last week, so we greatly appreciate that. And it is always encouraged on our Saturday Q&As. And then Sunday, since the Chargers are an away game, we will be live right after the game wraps up. So, the Chargers are playing at 10, so we'll be around 1:30-ish, depending on exactly what time the game ends on Sunday. All right. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Like I mentioned, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. All that good stuff does continue to help grow the show. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. As always, bolt up.